myself again.
Good evening and welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. And if you keep seeing this looking away, it's because I've got to have this Liverpool-Man United game on in the background there. 5-0 to Liverpool at Old Trafford. Ollie looks as sick as a chip, and I'm sure we'll end up talking about chips at some point tonight because it's this Ollie and Steve show. Good evening, Debs, that you've got on your screen.
Yeah, evening. It's my new name, Debs now. It's no longer the Holly and Steve show. It's now the Debs and Steve show. Or the Debs and Harry show, depending on what you want to call it.
This all comes from lookalikes on Friday. If you haven't watched the Three Amigos, give it a watch on Friday on Catch Up. You'll see what we're going on about. Before we start talking football, last week, if you watched the show, you will be aware of it did turn into a bit of a food chat at one point where Holly was disgusted at some of my food tastes. One in particular was that when I've been to places such as Coleman's on the coast, I've had a pie, a mince pie with chips, salt and vinegar on, gravy, tub of curry, tub of mushy peas, some ketchup, and some bread and butter. Now, I didn't think there was anything wrong with that, and obviously caused a bit of debate. Now, in Manchester, there's a place called Crazy Pedro's, Holly, and take a look at this.
Is that mushy peas on a pizza?
So, Crazy Pedro's does a pizza with sausage, chips, mushy peas, and curry on it.
Oh my God. I don't know what's worse now, your fish shop supper or that.
So there we go. Just to prove that it's not just me and my mental imagination that eats crazy stuff. There is other people and other places that actually sell to accommodate people like me. So there we go. I'm sure we'll end up with some more food chat at a later date. But let's concentrate on football. Newcastle were at Crystal Palace yesterday. Good old-fashioned 3 o'clock kickoff. And we managed to come away with a 1-1 draw, Ollie. So let's talk our way through that. Obviously, we'll be taking questions from people in the chat as well. Your take on the game yesterday, first of all.
I thought we played horrendous, to be honest. I thought we were really, really poor. A draw was definitely more than we deserved. Of course, VAR ended up saving the day at the latter stages of the game. I did think they made the right decision with VAR, but ultimately, I think Palace probably did deserve the win. I thought we got totally played off the park. Sometimes we had 3 of our players on one of their player, and they still managed to keep possession of the ball. It was horrendous. I thought defensively we were pretty shocking. Darlow, he made a couple of good saves, but overall, I don't think that he had his best game yet again. I would like to see Dubravka back at some stage, hopefully not too much longer of a wait for that. Midfield, thought were very, very poor again. Up top, I did really like Wilson and ESM playing together, though. I thought they played fantastically well together. I thought they worked really well, linked up well. But apart from those two, I just think totally, from the very back of the pitch, from the keeper all the way up to the attack, I thought we were very, very, very poor.
I mean, what did you make of the starting lineup? Graham Jones, of course, was in charge, for his first interim game. We're led to believe he'll be in charge, of course, next week when Chelsea come to St James's Park. But he made a couple of changes, and I think a lot of people were probably shocked that he brought Kraft in, and also gave Ryan Fraser a start. And a lot of people have been, crying for Ryan Fraser to be in the team, pointing towards his performances for Scotland. Obviously, clearly had an issue with Steve Bruce, or Steve Bruce had an issue with him. What did he make of those 2 players coming into the starting lineup?
Kraft, I wasn't very happy with him starting initially. I thought it was very bizarre. I think most of us can agree that he's probably one of Wapura defenders. I don't think he's good at right back or centre back because I know he plays in both positions. I didn't think he was horrendous, really, but I thought the defence overall was pretty poor. So it probably wasn't that good of a game to judge him by, because ultimately the other players weren't really doing anything to try and make him stand out, so to speak. Ryan Fraser coming into the side, I wasn't expecting it. I was quite shocked that Joe Linton was dropped, especially after that Spurs game, because although I know Joe Linton's not the best of players, I thought in that Spurs game, he was probably one of the standout players on the pitch, which probably is a worrying thing to be saying, to be honest, if we're being totally honest about it. But I thought that he did pretty well. But I wasn't against Ryan Fraser coming in, because I do think he makes an impact when he comes onto the pitch. He changes the game up a little bit. But I really wasn't impressed with Fraser in that game, to be honest with you. I think that he pretty much went under the radar, made a few bad passes, and certainly didn't keep possession of the ball when he should have done.
Yeah, it wasn't the greatest of games, I've got to be honest, for Ryan Fraser. I was surprised to see Crafty, and he didn't do too badly. I guess the standout statistic, and I mean, stats, are there. We can look at them. We can compare them to other teams, compare them to ourselves in previous weeks or under previous managers. But ultimately, 25% possession. I think that probably shows you how bad a game it was yesterday.
Yeah, I think we normally average around 40%. We usually do have the minority of possession in most games, regardless of whether it's home or away, but 25% is staggeringly low. Didn't surprise me that was the stat at all, because I think 99% of the time you saw Crystal Palace on the ball. Hence why I feel like they should have probably went on to win the game. Of course, I'm delighted that we got that point. It's a very important point for us, but ultimately I think that we just need to massively, and it's not just about keeping possession, but I think it's also about the fact that we don't actually try to get the ball. We just allow them to play, especially when they're in their own half, but we should always be going for that ball constantly, letting them in and around the 18-yard box like all the time, like as if we were in no danger, which is a massive worry for me.
Yeah, I would agree. It was, it was just, it was a job well done. I felt, though, although not a great performance, we put, men behind the ball. We defended resolutely, and against a team that, has to be said, had been doing okay. They were one of my tips at the start of the season for being involved in the relegation battle. I felt Vieira probably wasn't going to come in and make any great waves. He was following on from Roy Hodgson, who'd done a good job at Crystal Palace, and I did feel that Vieira would probably have them in and around the relegation fight. I mean, it's early days still, for that. He may still well get dragged into it. Who knows? Benteke caused us all kinds of problems at the back. And ultimately, I think, when we're talking and looking ahead to transfers, it's one of the things I keep saying on this show that we need a good spine of that team. I think we need a good centre-half. I think we need a good creative midfielder. And I think we need another centre-forward to get alongside Wilson and help us with putting the ball in the back of the net. But ultimately, yeah, Benteke for them caused us a few problems yesterday, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. And I think the defence has been a problem for pretty much the whole season. I don't think it's just the centre-backs. I think the full-backs struggle as well at times. Also, I've noticed that in recent games, whether we're playing, obviously, 5 at the back, so we have 3 centre-backs, or if we're playing 4 with the 2 centre-backs, the 2 centre-backs tend to play really far apart, which I don't understand, especially when we're under attack. You would think that they would come closer together, try and protect the goal, but they don't seem to be doing that. So I'm not sure if that's a tactical decision specifically made by Graham Jones, or whether they're just, making a mistake and that just seems to be happening for some reason. But yeah, the defence is worrying me. I definitely agree we need another centre-back, but also I think we definitely need to strengthen, not so much at right back, but definitely left back.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, there's a whole team could be bought, if we're being perfectly honest, but we're not going to do that in the January transfer window. We need to have essentially some key personnel coming in. We'll talk a little bit about that later. There has been 1 or 2 more names linked, and some which I would say have probably got a bit more credence. Of course, this week Steve Bruce departed these shores, and it was a long time coming. A lot of managers probably wouldn't have got quite as long as Steve Bruce did in the job with the results that he'd been getting. Were you pleased to see the back of him?
Yeah, of course I was. I think any Newcastle fan would be pleased to see the back of Steve Bruce. I think he had to go. After that Spurs game, you could clearly see that he was inept. He didn't know what he was doing, and he had to leave the football club, otherwise we weren't going to win a game. I
mean, do you think they could have got rid of him sooner? Were you surprised to see him there that long?
Yeah, I was expecting him to go before the Spurs game, but in the same breath, I could understand why they did that, because obviously in their mind, they didn't have someone ready to come straight in for the job, so they didn't want to be kind of just stuck with Graham Jones. Of course, he is just a coach. I know he's got managerial experience in the past, but he hasn't been the most successful, and it's a big step up from head coach to, from like the main coach to obviously the manager of the team. So yeah, I was expecting it to happen sooner, but thankfully they haven't waited much longer. I think they watched that Spurs game with their own eyes. It was there for all to see that Steve Bruce was just very, very struggling. It's been he was into his third season at Newcastle now, and he still couldn't find his best team. And if you can't find your best team after that long, I don't think you're ever going to be able to.
No, that's the big thing, isn't it? And I mean, ultimately the media loving, which we saw for Steve Bruce whilst he was Newcastle manager, has continued after, to the point where today Twitter has exploded with hashtag Bruce in for Man United, because a lot of Man United fans have stuck up for Steve Bruce throughout his period at Newcastle. And it's just crazy, isn't it? There's been some ludicrous statements made by some fairly well-respected people in the media backing Steve Bruce and saying that he was hard done by.
Yeah, I think a lot of these people are probably just going off how they know Steve Bruce as a person. And obviously we can't really comment on that because we don't know him personally, and I'm sure that he's a nice guy. But the results are there for all to see. 19th in the league, 3 points, no wins. It doesn't take a genius to work out that he wasn't doing a good enough job. So ultimately, I think it's easy to judge how a manager's doing at another club and say, oh, I feel sorry for them or whatever. But if they came in to their club, then I'm sure they wouldn't be saying the same thing. I think they would be wanting them out as well.
Yeah, I don't think we'll see a clamour for Man United fans wanting him at Manchester United if Ole Gunnar Solskjaer gets the sack. Still 5-0 to Liverpool. Manchester United, of course, down to 10 men. Pogba getting sent off for a horrendous challenge. And again, something I said at the start of the season, when Ronaldo signed for Man United, putting Ronaldo and Pogba in the same dressing room was never going to work because there's two huge egos, rubbing together, and you need a really world-class manager to be able to manage those. And Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, I'm afraid, just isn't a world-class manager, in my humble opinion. There has been a lot of stick continuing for Newcastle fans on Twitter. I've seen a hell of a lot today, Holly. And of course, that stems from the match yesterday, where Crystal Palace fans unfurled a flag in the home end with a rather crude depiction of Bin Salman on, and a huge sword and a magpie, etc. And from my perspective, that kind of thing really shouldn't be able to get past the eyes and hands of the stewards on the gate. I mean, it was a big old flag, but it did. They've unfurled it. And I guess my question is, where were all these flags when Manchester City's takeover took place? Where were all these flags when Chelsea were taken over by Russia? And I saw it on the news yesterday that the country, the government were notified by MI5, I think it was, and the security services, that the biggest risk to this country at the moment is Russia. And of course, they manage a team, and they own a team in the Premier League. One of the biggest names in Russia owns the team in the Premier League. Where were all the protests for these other takeovers?
I think it's definitely not paranoia on Newcastle fans' behalf that there's been an anti-Newcastle agenda for a long, long time, especially within the media, TV channels, newspapers, etc. I think that's been the case for a long, long time. Of course, we knew throughout this whole takeover process, which was very drawn out, that people weren't happy about it. They were trying to stop it as much as they could. Ended up going through, and I think from my perspective, I certainly expected backlash from that. I think that was just a given. And because the simple way to put it is, it's jealousy. They wanted their club to be the richest in the world. They don't want the big six knocked off their perch, and they don't want to see us challenging. And again, it does become a little bit of a political thing, because ultimately we are the most northern in the Premier League, and if we start getting success, then it'll bring power up to the north, which some people won't be happy about. So there is a bit of politics involved in that. So I think that I could expect it. I think that banner from Crystal Palace fans was in very, very poor taste. I don't think it was appropriate whatsoever, and didn't put a fair light on the country of Saudi Arabia at all. I think that if it was any other situation, the Premier League or kick it out, or even Crystal Palace Football Club itself would have been straight on the case to say we can't put that banner up in the game, but yet they got away with it. And I think it does need to be looked into, because it's not on. Obviously, we saw the Spurs game. They had the big vans driving around with pictures of Jamal Khashoggi on. And again, I just think it's not fair, because it's putting a lot of responsibility on the Newcastle fans. In my opinion, they're trying to make us feel ashamed to support our football club, the football club that we've supported all of our lives. And they shouldn't be doing that whatsoever, because we're football fans, nothing more.
Yeah, it's almost as if, the media have got a narrative, they've got an agenda, and they're trying to drive all of the eyes onto Newcastle and almost watching our every move. And I think that's really unfair.
It is. It does put a lot of pressure onto us. It's already a stressful situation because in the league we aren't in the best of positions. We are going to have to fight to get out of that and try and stabilise ourselves. There'll be a lot of pressure on the January window, and the new owners will be under a lot of scrutiny. Like you said, they're watching every move. I think the first time we slip up, hopefully we don't, but there's that possibility there that we could. The first time, though, I think they'll jump on it straight away and it'll just go out of proportion. The smallest thing will become a massive issue because that's the way this whole thing's kind of run. So unfortunately, I just think that we're going to have to just try our best to ignore it, but it's going to be very, very difficult, and people are going to try and make it as hard as possible for us.
As always, Holly and I like to get you involved watching at home and drive the narrative. So get your questions in, plenty of them coming in, and plenty of different topics to take us on a different journey tonight. So we'll go to Doug Hall first. He goes, what would you think if Haag and Overmars came in as manager and director of football? Although Rafa might be looking for a job soon. Yeah, they've been mentioned, haven't they? Over the last 48 hours, Overmars potentially coming in, and he would bring Haag with him. Is that something that would please you, Holly?
I believe Overmars is currently at Ajax, isn't he?
He is.
Yeah. I think he's done obviously he seems to have done pretty well at Ajax and stuff like that. So again, I don't really know a great deal about a lot of directors of football. Like, I'm not going to lie about that. But I think that it could be an exciting prospect going forward. Of course, you want someone that's got a lot of experience and has good connections. I think that's an important part because it's not going to be the easiest job straight away to try and attract managers, players, etc. Because of the position we find ourselves in. A lot of high quality and good players and managers will want a pre-made football club that's already challenging in the league and already in Champions League spots. We're a long way off that yet. So I think bringing someone like that in who's got connections will make a massive difference in terms of recruitment.
What about Rafa? Because it's not going too well. He's had 2 defeats back-to-back now and a horrendous home defeat yesterday. And the banners are out and the boos were quite prominent down at Goodison yesterday. Do you think they may keep with Jones a little longer and see how that develops?
I'd love to see it. Honestly, I've took so much stick ever since Rafa left the club because, to be honest, I haven't really shut up about him. And maybe we should have moved on. But at the end of the day, I just think he was fantastic. I think he did a lot for the football club. We all know what he did. We don't need to go into that. But I just think he's a perfect manager going forward, especially the way we are now, because he didn't save us. We did go down, but obviously we were already pretty much on a hiding to nothing. Got us promoted at the first attempt, then stabilised us in the Premier League with a very, very low budget, not being treated fairly by the owners. So if you give him a little bit of backing, I think he could sort this situation out straight away this season. And then I think next season we could start to progress up the table. I think it's a perfect project for him, and I don't think you could get anyone better. So yeah, I would love to see Rafa come back, and I'll certainly be tweeting #Rafa out and hoping Everton sack him soon.
Dave Harrison, good evening. We've already touched on the banner, but he does say, once again, we've been abused in the Sunday Mirror, calling us deluded. What's your thoughts on that, Holly?
That's the one thing that annoys me the most. Every time I do an interview and get asked about that kind of how we're portrayed in the media, that's something I always like to hammer home. The fact that they constantly put this idea out there that Newcastle fans have unrealistic expectations, are demanding too much, never been the case, utter rubbish. None of that's ever been said. Ultimately, we just want to see us progress, to see us do more than we're currently doing, to get out the relegation zone. I don't think that's being deluded. But ultimately, I think most Newcastle fans know nothing's going to happen overnight. We're not going to get that success straight away. We need to sort out the situation. It's a long-term project, and I'm certainly not expecting to be challenging for probably 5 seasons, if I'm being honest.
Exactly. Double Coronation Street's on tomorrow night, Holly, says Tom.
I'll be giving that a miss. I've never watched so much rubbish in all my life.
Oh, God, it was gripping this week. It was gripping the whole...
I didn't even see what the cliffhanger was. You had to explain it to us.
Oh, God, honestly. You will get there eventually. It's a great programme, and I'm sure you'll thoroughly enjoy it once you probably had some distraction in the room or something. Maybe your dad was talking through it. You need to rewind it and start again if that happens. Mr. Sifter, I had to ban him from the chat for a couple of minutes because I think it was getting a bit heated. But I will read out what he said because there's always, another opinion. What about the banner that was unfurled at the match and the comments written on it? It was all true. None of it was made up. They are connected to beheadings, terrorism, persecution, and more. Mr. Sifter, the point I was making earlier is there was none of this for those other takeovers. And that's the point. Why is this one such an issue with football supporters from other football clubs? Why is it an issue? I'll tell you why it's an issue. It's because Newcastle United are now a serious threat to the cartel. That's the bottom line. It's got nothing to do with money. Money doesn't always bring success, but it's because we are a threat to the cartel. And anyone who supports Manchester United, Man City, Liverpool, Arsenal, Tottenham and Chelsea will not be happy with this takeover of Newcastle United, because ultimately it could put a big dent in that top 6. And you know what? The more of this that goes on from other supporters and the supporters from other teams, the happier I am, because it'd be great to get up their noses, and it'll be great over the next few years to see Newcastle United change as a football club to become one of the dominant forces, and at last bring something up north, because, you know, we've had nothing up here and we shouldn't be denied the opportunity for a fair competition. And that's ultimately now, we feel we're now part of a fair competition, because where is the fairness in having a cartel of 6 teams at the top of a league and not allowing anybody else to join the club, not allowing anybody else to join the table? It would be great if everybody in the Premier League had a takeover like this, and then it would be a fair league. But that's, of course, not what, you know, suits the other clubs' agendas. So I hope that answers your question, and we'll give you another chance when your ban in the chat ends. But can't have you, you know, upsetting fans and you know, on a Newcastle podcast when ultimately, you know, you're only coming on to have an argument. That's not what this show is about. And you know, we'll see what the crack is when you come back. Gary says, he's actually, that was one of those chats where he's having a discussion with Mr. Sifter. Gary says, good evening, Stephen Holly. When Newcastle game yesterday, my thought was that Newcastle had kind of got together with Graham Jones, knowing that they only had 2 to 3 days in training, but his big challenge is still to come. Yeah, I would say it. Look, he knows what he's going to do, Holly, doesn't he? Graham Jones has come in. His interview the day before the game, I thought was encouraging, and it was just great to hear somebody speak with passion. Subsequently, his interview after the game, I thought was good as well. I just think he gave a good account of himself.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think I can't praise him highly enough for how he spoke in the interviews. I thought it was fantastic. I thought he represented the football club well. Lovely to see him speak like he was just a fan, which he is. And I think that's really, really refreshing to hear. Certainly different to how Steve Bruce spoke, and ultimately was very, very professional how he handled himself and answered the questions. But also, I think that Graham Jones knows he's got a job to do. He needs to grind out results. He managed to do that, thankfully. Wasn't the prettiest to watch, but I don't really care how we do it, just as long as we do get those points. And I think that's what Graham Jones did. So fair play to him, and hopefully we can start picking up at the home form, because I think that should be a big priority.
Okay, Barry Hogan, good evening, mate. He says, Steve Holly, what do you think of the comments that certain Premier League clubs will refuse to sell to us because of the takeover? Yeah, I saw that. I feel that that's never going to happen. And I'll tell you why, because agents run football. And you're telling me that if an agent is looking after a player that's got 1 year left on his deal, and he's keen to get him a move to Newcastle because he knows he can get a bigger payday for his client, and in turn, maybe it's a percentage of a transfer fee, then ultimately it's got nothing to do with the football team, because an agent will decide where his player goes. That's my view on that. Barry, what about you, Holly?
Yeah, I agree. And also, I think if you offer them X amount of money, that's probably irrefusable. Then I think they're not going to say, oh, no, we're not having it because it's Newcastle. I think they'll just want the money and they'll sell. Oh, simple as that, really.
Connor Cody's been linked today, and I would say there's legs in that. I would definitely say there's legs in that. And I've mentioned at the top of the show that we need a good spine of the team. We need a centre half. We need a football player in the centre of the park. We need a goal scorer. But ultimately, Connor Cody, I don't think would be a bad shout. He's an organizer. He's in the England squad from time to time. I've had the pleasure of meeting him on a couple of occasions, because I know that he's good friends with Rafa's backroom staff. So Connor Cody, is that one that you would like to see through the doors in January?
Yeah, definitely. I think that he's a decent centre-back. I think we massively need a centre-back. We're crying out for one. Really, we've got Fabian Schär, which I think could be an interesting prospect going forward, because Steve Bruce didn't really obviously rate him very highly, didn't get much of a chance. Now with Steve Bruce leaving the club, I think that maybe Fabian Schär could get another chance, but ultimately we need to bring someone else in there, because the defence is aging. It's not good enough. So Connor Cody would be fantastic to bring in, I think.
Yeah, I think so. 5-0 was the final score in that game at Old Trafford. We'll see whether Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is the next manager to be sacked, I guess, in the next couple of hours. But a hilarious contrast of facial expressions when that 5th goal went in, and Kenny Dalglish was absolutely howling, and Sir Alex Ferguson didn't look very happy at all. It's not like seeing Alex Ferguson unhappy, I've got to say. Mark says, ignore the protests. If they got bought by them, they would love it. They want to kick people when they are down. There is a lot of jealousy. Funko, good evening. He says, I'd like to see how many Chelsea, Man U, Man City, Liverpool and Spurs fans are wearing tune tops next season. There's a few day trippers. Easy solution, says Graham. If Premier League teams refuse to sell us players, buy from abroad. I'm sure we'll get cheaper deals doing it that way. It'll never happen. It will never happen. No one will be able to prevent us doing business, I'm afraid. Barry says the Ajax duo will cost us twice their annual wages in compensation. That's something to think about, but we're not short of a few quid, Barry. The Black and White Knight says, Ole for the tune job with Stanley as he's number 2. Stanley. I'll get you. Is this like a Laurel and Hardy reference? I'm not sure they am. Maybe it's too late on a Sunday night. Where's Kick It Out when you need them? That banner was pretty racist, Doug. A lot of people made that point last night. What do you both make of the rumour the Premier League teams will refuse to sell any players in the hope we get relegated? David, we've already spoken on that tonight. Over Mars didn't want to know as a player. He retired instead of coming to us. So sod off to him, I say, says Funko. Mark also says, I'd like to stop talking about rumours, to be honest. It's all made up rubbish by people, agents, trying to make money. It is true, mate. We have been linked with everybody and anybody, Holly, haven't we?
Yeah, I think we could expect that, though. When they see Newcastle's the richest club, we're just going to get linked with ridiculous names that we're never going to get.
Yeah, Kenny says it's about time the North East gets some recognition because it's going to be all over the national news for years to come. Newcastle will develop into a big brand across the world, and I can't wait. Jeff says wheels are coming off all over the place. Andrew says, I don't want Rafa back. Time to start afresh and move on, not look back. I wasn't a massive fan. Yeah, and I mean, we've discussed it on this show. You and I both would be delighted, I guess, to see Rafa back. But that isn't the case with everybody, is it?
No, and actually I was speaking to my uncle today who is totally against Rafa coming back to the football club, wasn't a fan of his style of football whatsoever, thought was too defensive. But for me personally, I just think maybe not in the long term. If we did start to challenge, then maybe you could think we'll bring someone in with a better style of football. But ultimately, Rafa's football got results. And if we get results, then I'm not going to complain.
No, me neither. Big shout out, as always, to our sponsors. First and foremost, Spider VPN. For all your internet security, Google Spider VPN. They come up at the top of your search list and they can protect your passwords and your photographs on your computer. Google Spider VPN. They are the boys to trust. Halloween is on its way, and another one of our main sponsors is skipsandbins.com. Telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website www.skipsandbins.com. Easy contract free and pay as you go waste collection. And L&G Family Funeral Directors 0191 389 7245. And qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend in Newcastle, and the guys who run our website. Also, big thank you to Jab Signature for making all of our flyers. If you're a first-time visitor to the channel, then you can subscribe by clicking the Newcastle Legends badge in the bottom right-hand corner, and that's it. You can subscribe for free. We do 7 shows a week and a few more extra besides. Hit the thumb up to like the video. That does us a favour. Click share to share to your other social media, such as Facebook and Twitter. And drop into the comments to speak to like-minded Newcastle fans or to get a question on the screen. And we're also available as a podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, and the rest. Usually goes up within 24 hours of the show. Don't forget as well, you can make a donation to the NUFC Fans Food Bank by visiting the website nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk. It's a match day bucket, but it's operational 365 days a year. You can make a virtual deposit and go into the raffle to win this watch. Also got some big events coming up this week and over the next couple of weeks. But first and foremost, Friday, 29th of October, this coming Friday at the Irish Centre. We've still got a few tickets left for an evening with Gavin Peacock. He's doing his Newcastle launch of his book, and we'll have copies of the book available. Also doing a Q&A with John Gibson on the stage, and looking forward to that night. There's going to be a few familiar faces from NUFC Matters there as well, so get yourself along. Tickets are £15. We also have an event coming up at the Irish Centre, which is a belated Christmas do from last year. COVID was obviously the preventer of that event. It's an evening with Supermac and John Gibson, and that is at the Irish Centre on November the 19th, and 7 o'clock kick-off for that. Tickets are £12. All proceeds are going to the food bank. And then into November, Peter Beardsley will be at the Irish Centre on the 26th of November, and that is £15 for those tickets. Tickets for all three events are available from newcastlelegends.com, and just click shop when you go on to there. Another one on this week, I'm comparing this one, and that's tonight with Rob Lee in Whitley Bay, and that will be at the Laurels Whitley venue. That's this coming Thursday, 8 o'clock. Tickets for that from www.laurelswhitley.co.uk. And into December, just before Christmas, another event for the food bank, and that is at Bobix in Jesmond. I'll be hosting an event with Supermac. All proceeds to the food bank, and it is bobix.com where you can buy your tickets for that event. Don't forget, Christmas is coming. My book, Every Boy's Dreams, available on Amazon. And if you have already bought one and enjoyed it, please leave a review on Amazon. And looking further forward to next weekend, Malcolm and I will be at the Dog and Parrot pre-match before the Chelsea game. We'll be in there around about 1 o'clock, so get yourself along. Also, the food bank are doing a raffle for some signed Peter Beardsley trainers. The winner will be drawn on the 26th of November at the Beardsley event. If you want to buy a ticket to win some customised trainers signed by Peter Beardsley, tickets are £1 from NUFC fans, foodbank.co.uk, and the trainers were supplied by I Am The Renovation. And just a little advert for a show that I'm appearing on, which I should have been on Friday, but the podcast host took ill. But this will now take place tonight, 8 o'clock. So I will be on Stream Islam, and that will be at 8 o'clock tonight. Me and a few other guests. Looking forward to that, to talk about the takeover and what it means to Newcastle as a football club and Newcastle as a city. Looking forward to that. And don't forget as well that this week, with it being half term, a couple of shows will be pre-recorded, including the Three Amigos on Friday. But we've got this as a special, an evening with Ben Jacobs, Wednesday night. Tune into that, because Ben's got his predictions for what he sees is going to happen with this takeover, both on and off the pitch. It was a cracking interview, a good hour's conversation with Ben. Always enjoy speaking to him about things. And despite him being a Leicester fan, he knows quite a lot about geopolitical subject. Plus, he's a bit of an expert on Newcastle United these days. So good to have a chat with him and get him on. And don't forget as well, on the website, plenty of stuff to pick up for Christmas. A lot of our T-shirts are up online now. So nufcmatters.com. Pop onto the website, give it a visit, and we will... got plenty of stuff more to go on there. John seems to be quite busy these days. Mark says, Rafa was a great guy, spoke very well, but his football was terrible. Baldy says, Steve, why isn't there an outcry for the stuff the fans are giving Rafa? I don't know. Really don't know. A lot of people giving Rafa abuse down in Everton. They were giving him it before he even took the job. But obviously, it's an Everton manager, a Liverpool manager going to Everton. It's a bit like Bruce coming to Newcastle in a lot of ways for some people. Stephen Holly says, I think the banner is just a start, I'm afraid. Another dire performance. Happy with the result, but I'd take 17th now and a new manager with 4 new signings in January. Yeah, I mean, there's no denying. We both felt that the performance was poor, but, you know, when you're down at the bottom, every point counts. Derek says, we need a director of football as the consortium has no football experience. They've got people in the background, Derek. They do have people in the background who are advising them, and they're very experienced, believe you me. So the face of Newcastle United might be Meada and Amanda, but these people aren't daft. They do have people behind them, 100%. Barry says, I know Doug Overmars seems interested, and the manager has a cracking record of bringing in top young players. I'm just getting on about Overmars, etc. Mark, quite prolific tonight. He says, I wouldn't want Rafa back in a million years. I think we liked him because he stuck up for us against Ashley. That's an interesting point, Ollie. What do you make of that?
I think that definitely went down well, because I think that ultimately we've seen a pattern over Ashley's reign where he appointed puppets, people that just said whatever he wanted them to say, and Rafa was the only one that went against that. So of course that was part of the reason why we liked him, but I think it wasn't just that. I think he came into the football club when we were at one of the worst states possible. We were very fractured on and off the pitch, repaired that, brought some hope to the football club like we've never seen before. We saw that final game in the season when we beat Spurs 5-1. The fans acted like we'd won the league when we were actually relegated at that point. Then, of course, won the championship first attempt, and then brilliant in the Premier League, finishing 10th within the first season back. I think it was fantastic.
Abigail says the banner wasn't political because these Palace fans don't give a toss about Saudi Arabia. They used this to score cheap points against Newcastle fans. Disgusting by Palace. Abigail, here. The Black and White Knight says Middlesbrough getting a huge £50 million petrochemicals contract. We spoke about this on Friday. From Saudi, creating hundreds of jobs. Are they going to refuse it? I doubt it. Yeah, well, I mentioned that on Friday, 100%. Do you think the club will have an announcement on a new manager this week, Holly? Asks Tom.
I think that probably within, I don't know, as my genuine answer, don't even have a gut feeling, but I think that we're probably going to have to get a manager within at least 2 weeks, because you can't go on in the position that we're in without someone that really knows what they're doing. But I think if Graham Jones is in the dugout for the Chelsea game, and I don't think we're going to get anything against Chelsea, but if we manage to, then maybe they'll have a bit of confidence and waiting a little bit longer so that they can get that perfect appointment.
Well, that takes us to Alan's question. He says, after Chelsea beat Norwich 7-0, what's your expectations for next week? Totally agree, Steve. Judge another podcast from rival fans. It's their God-given right to be in the top big six. I mean, I don't think Chelsea are going to hammer Newcastle next weekend at all. And that might sound bizarre when you think about how badly we've played since the start of the season, and how how we set up yesterday and the percentage of possession we had yesterday. But Newcastle United, St James's Park, 52,000 people in there. One of the big six who's tried to deny the takeover coming in. Graham Jones has another full week of training them and putting them through their paces and doing things that Steve Bruce would never even think of doing. I'm sorry, but anybody thinks that we can't have a chance of going in next week of getting something out of the game, you clearly just don't understand how things can change in a short space of time. And I'm not saying we're going to become world beaters, okay? But Newcastle United, this team, and I know it's an older squad now than it was 3 or 4 years ago, but Matt Ritchie, Shelvey, not my favourite player, Lascelles, all of these people, they really do respond when the backs are against the wall. They have done time and time again. They did it under Bruce. They did it under Rafa. They did it under Pardew. Some of these players have been there that long, and you look at it and think, I genuinely feel Newcastle United won't be embarrassed next weekend and might just pull off a shock. That's my prediction now. Hollywood, I know you just said you don't expect to get anything, but can you see why I've said that?
Yeah, of course I can. And I think that Newcastle's a team that's a bit bizarre in the sense that we tend to step up against the top six and then we play badly against our local relegation rivals, But I don't know. And if you cast your mind back a couple of years ago, we were playing Chelsea at home and we beat them 1-0 with a 94th minute winner from Isaac Hayden or something. So it is within that side to be able to do it, and that wasn't too long ago. But I'd predict a 2-0 win for Chelsea, to be honest, because I just think it's a big, big ask. And I think against Palace, we did get that point, but I thought we were horrendous.
Yeah, that's what it's all about, opinions. Andrew says, I'm originally from Liam Lane. It's lovely to see the felon lad get a chance to boss his childhood club, and he came across top class in interviews. In an ideal world, I'd love to see him as boss. I wouldn't want to see him as boss, I've got to be honest, but keeping him involved, I think, would be fantastic. If that can happen. If not, he goes with our best wishes. He's never let us down. It's been great having him involved. Mark says, question, I think our players think they're all sacked. It's going to be hard to motivate them now, isn't it? Mark, that's a great question. Something I was chatting to somebody about this morning or yesterday. I'm not 100% sure. I can't remember now. But I was having a chat about that. Yeah, these players now may feel that they could be out the door, some of them. I mean, do you think that's going to affect their performances, Holly?
I think it should be the opposite, actually, because I think they'll realise that we're not just going to go in the summer or in January and buy a whole new team, because that's impossible. It's never going to happen. So for the next few seasons, we'll still have a lot of these players at the football club whilst we slowly rebuild that squad. So these players should be going into a game in the weekly training sessions, trying to impress whoever it is that's in charge, currently Graham Jones, then going into the game and fighting for their place in that side, getting onto the pitch and trying their best to impress the manager and the new owners and saying, this is why I should be one of the players that's kept here. And that should be the motivation for me. So I'd actually like to see them improve their performance. One or two players who already have a negative mindset, you might think, well, they know they're out the door because ultimately they can't step up. They're not good enough to step up. So I think maybe it might make a few players worse, but ultimately I think they should use that as motivation to prove why they should be one of the few players that's kept.
Yeah, Barry says, Cody's a good captain, ex-Liverpool player, couldn't get a game, really passionate, would love him alongside Tarkowski. Yeah, I mean, I think Cody is a great signing. If that is a true story, and it's a big if, I would take him tomorrow, 100%. If he would want to come, even better. Lee says the treatment of Rafa this weekend at Everton's been abhorrent. Strange time we live in, or is it strange people who live amongst us? Frankly, we need a new spine, Jeff. Exactly, that's what I was saying. We don't agree with you lot being owned by the Saudis. 80 million for Lingard. Oh, yes, please. Gary McBurney says USA have a death sentence. People going missing in Russia and Ukraine. Qatar and United Arab Emirates have similar issues, but it's just because it's Newcastle. Yeah, I would agree. Derek says, if any Premier League club refuses to deal with us again, it's illegal, so anti-competitive and agents would not entertain that. But that was the point that was making. I'd be well happy with Cody, says Andrew. Yeah, me too, mate. I think he would make a big difference coming in as well. Sean Dyche would be worth a shot, says the Geordie Parrot. Nah, Holly, he doesn't. Although he makes a good lookalike for me, I don't think Sean Dyche would do well at Newcastle.
No, and I'm actually a big fan of Sean Dyche because I think he's done a really good job with Burnley. I think he's one of the few managers that would have been able to keep them up because they haven't been financially backed whatsoever and they're very, very poor side. But yeah, I wouldn't like to see Sean Dyche come to Newcastle because I feel like that would be an Ashley appointment, in all honesty.
Yeah, Mr. Sifter says, I wasn't looking for an argument, Steve, just making a point, no harm intended, pal. No problem, mate. It's just obviously some things I see in the chat that people get a little bit aerated. And I've got to be honest, this whole Saudi thing, it's really unfair on Newcastle fans that we're getting targeted by other fans. And, you know, we've just got to accept that that's going to happen over the next few months. But we do try to keep a cleaner chat and no offence taken, mate, and no offence meant as well. And Nicholas from the Felon says, Steve, we should get an NUFC Matters store in the airport this time next year. Rodney will be millionaires. I'm not sure that will go down too well, mate, but I like the sentiment anyway. Raymond says, do you think we'll have a manager this week? I don't. Holly?
No, I think it could be at least a couple of weeks.
Yeah, me too. The fact that he was given a couple of weeks in the hot seat, Graham Jones, would tell you that. I think international break, we'll have one. I think we'll have one by then, but I think they're going to take the time. Daniel Kane says, need Fonseca, watch his documentaries. Defoe is what we need. Pep said when they beat City, the best opponent ever played against them, loves his style. I've got to be honest, I don't know a great deal about Fonseca. I've read up on him this week. Seems okay. Seems to be very opinionated and driven. Not a bad thing, but ultimately, I'm not 100% convinced I would have him as my first choice, to be perfectly honest. Kenny says there's no link to the show at 8 p.m. The messages today, mate, Stream Islam, I'm sure it will be going up at some point. I haven't had the link to the show yet, so maybe they're setting it up at a late call, but it's definitely happening. They're advertising it. Hi, Steve and Holly. Love the show from William in Belfast. Thank you, William.
Thank you.
Very good. Andrew says, Vieira's impressing me at Palace. Big future in management ahead of him. Wouldn't be a bad choice. You see, I still don't think Vieira's going to do well at Palace. Like, I think he's had a good start, but I don't know. I don't know whether it's just his lack of charisma. I really don't know. Something about him that I just got a feeling that he's not going to work. But I don't know. A lot of people would say that Gerrard isn't going to work in management, but I would take him at Newcastle tomorrow. You know what I mean? Barry says, Steve and Holly, is there someone you would like to see come in as a new team captain? If Cody comes in, I'd give it to him, because I always feel a centre-half should be the captain, because he's got a good view of everything that's going on the pitch. So I think if Connor Cody comes in, he gets the captain's armband. Holly, what about you?
Yeah, it's a good shout. And if we're going off current players, I'd probably give it to Matt Ritchie. I think most of us agree that he's the most vocal on the pitch. Yeah, I know. Bad podcast to say this on. I'll be just getting reminded of that constantly now.
I'm going to get a recording of this and make it my ringtone on my phone. I think Matt Ritchie should be captain. God, that's a belt of that. Peter says, Rapper was tactically astute. We played that way because it was the best he could do with the players he had at the time. If he'd been given money, we would have been playing attacking open football. Peter, 100%. He never got the opportunity at all. And that's the bottom line. He never got any money to spend, did he really, Holly?
No, he had a net spend of like -2 million. So that just tells you all you need to know. I think if he was backed, they put trust in him and he had a project there, I think he would absolutely flourish.
Yeah. Ryan Sweet says, Mick Lowes is more negative about new owners than he is Steve Bruce. Ryan, it was interesting. It is interesting. It is all about opinions. And Mick's, what a thing about Mick is, and it's why I love having him on the show, is that he doesn't always toe the party line. He doesn't go with the majority. He's got his own opinion. And that's what makes Mick a great commentator, a great person, and ultimately I think he's got his own opinions about that, so we'll see how it all develops. Is commenting prolifically a good thing or a bad thing? I'm not sure what you're talking about there, Mark. Sinkhole for Joe Linton, please, says Nicholas from the Felon. That's a reference to Coronation Street. That's a bit unfair on the lad. I wouldn't wish that on him. Richard Milligan says, instill belief, the rest will follow. Hatred adored, never ignored. I love it. Tom says, I'm not as confident as Steve. I admire your optimism and I hope you're right. Tom and I were having a chat on Twitter earlier on, and I still think we'll be fine. I don't think we'll go down. Tom is of the opposite feeling. He thinks that this could be a relegation season. What do you feel now, Holly?
I think we'll stay up. If I was to predict, I would probably say we'll finish in around 14th. I don't think it's going to be a pretty season, but I think January will be a massive point. You'd like to think that we've already got ourselves out of that bother before January, but I think depending on who we bring in determines where we finish in the league, but I really don't think we'll go down. Tom
says, Holly, did Newcastle miss Shelby yesterday, and would you put him in the squad for the Chelsea game?
The midfield was poor. Sean Longstaff had a very, very bad game, in my opinion. Wasn't impressed with him at all. Thought the midfield was poor. Willock, maybe we missed Willock more than Shelby. I know Willock hasn't had the greatest of seasons, but he's a steady Eddie. He's been a 5 out of 10 player, someone you can rely on. But no, I don't think we miss Shelby whatsoever. I think he's been absent for many games, never really makes an impact. And no, I wouldn't put him on a Chelsea purely because of that absolute nightmare he had against Spurs where he got the 2 yellow cards. I thought it was ridiculous, unnecessary, so unprofessional. And no, I wouldn't be giving him a second chance anytime soon.
Alan says, Holly and Steve, that was 1 point Steve Bruce would never do. Stick up against Ashley. In fact, quite the opposite. It's what got fans back up and wanted Bruce gone, never mind the results. Yeah, I don't think Brucey would have got a point yesterday. Hope you're right about the Chelsea game. Can I have some more you've had, Steve? Only kidding. Well said. And up the tune. Barry says he's gutted that we haven't appeared on the gossip pages this week. Yeah, MSN, Messenger, whatever the news thing is that we often appear on. I've got no idea. We don't seem to be on there as much these days, which maybe is a good thing. Simon says, playing catch-up, having a new manager in, players having to adapt to new staff, not a Bruce supporter, by the way. Funko says, when can we see the Simon Jordan gig? I don't think I'd ever do a talk game with Simon Jordan. I mean, what would I ask him about? You know what I mean? And would never sell a ticket. If you got him, maybe he's in. You got him across, and I don't know. You got him in to talk about, his life and career. I just don't think anybody would want to come. Probably people would want to come and do what they used to do in the olden days and chuck rotten fruit at them or something. I think that's probably you put him in the stocks for charity for the food bank. I think you'd more chance of getting a crowd. I hope Joe Linton impresses Blythe Spartans and goes in the summer, says Alan. Gary says, Holly, if you were looking for new players for Newcastle, what percentage will you be looking for him? 1% being bad to 100% being a top player.
I don't understand the question.
He's wanting to know what kind of player would you want in? What percentage would you be looking at? So a player that gives 1% or a player that gives 100%, I think.
Well, effort, obviously, you'd be going for 100%. In terms of actual quality, I'd be happy to go for like a 50% steady Eddie, because I think that's all we need, just short-term players to stabilise us.
Yeah, Tom says, Holly, what's your thoughts on Gale? I thought he might have come on yesterday against his former club.
Dwight Gale is a very, very strange situation because he's been given a new contract. He has little spells in the team where he normally does quite well, and then he goes out of the team and doesn't play again, comes on as a sub and is horrendous. But the formation and the system that we play doesn't really suit him. We constantly play a high ball. Dwight Gale's a rather short player. You know, it's not really going to work out. And I don't think he's got a future at the football club. I'd be happy to let him go.
Stephen, good evening, mate. He says, evening, Rafa out, Moyes in. I'm still angry. Our resident Everton fan who likes to tune in every now and then. It's not good, is it? When you concede 5 goals at home. It's just one of them games. Rafa does have them games occasionally where there's just, something just seems to go wrong. And I'm afraid that's what happened yesterday. I think it will be a struggle for us to stay up unless we get at least 4 or 5 players in, says Paul. Yeah, well, I think we will get 4 or 5 players in January. I do think we will, and I don't think they'll be poor quality. I think we'll get decent quality players. The transfer window will be a good one. I guarantee that. Ryan Sweeney says, definitely need a manager ASAP. I'm just happy the problems are gone apart from players, and happy with Jones until replaced. Life Goes says, why not make Wilson captain, one of the 2 quality players in the squad? Great goal yesterday. Would you have him as a captain?
I think he's probably one of the better people as a captain, actually. It wouldn't be my first choice. I don't want to repeat it again, but we know who my first choice captain would be, like I just said earlier in the show. Yeah. But yeah, he'd certainly be up there.
Say it again.
I'm not saying it again. You've heard it enough times. I don't even know what I was talking about now. Wilson, what was I saying about? I don't know. I'm just going to have to move on.
Kenzie, yes, Overmars has been mentioned as a potential director of football, not as a manager. Obviously, to bring Haag in as a manager, that was the other suggestion, potentially coming in as a double act. Matthew Smith says, do you think Joe Linton will stay now? He's had a slow start to life at Newcastle. Slow? Dear me, how? But he's the current record signing. Matthew, I hope not. I hope that we'll manage to get rid of him. God knows how we'll get rid of him, but I think we will at some point. He's just not Premier League class. He's not going to stay, is he?
See, I think he will. I really think he will stay at the team. I don't think like in the long term, but I think for a few seasons he will stay here. Because obviously you're going to have to bring new players in, but we'll still have to keep quite a few of the same squad. And I think Joe Linton's just going to be one of those ones that just hangs around, to be honest.
I thought Fraser was invisible, says Jeff. Yeah, you're not going to get an argument from us on that. He was pretty invisible. It was a strange game yesterday for somebody not getting a game to then suddenly have such a poor game didn't make sense. Paul says Clark was at fault for the goal. Yeah, I can't defend Clark. Benteke just ran rings around him yesterday. He's a big physical presence, and if you watch the game back. Just the goals. Don't watch the whole game back. You'll just depress yourself. But watch the goals, right? Newcastle centre-halves are getting the blame. I blame the players supposedly trying to close down those putting the crosses in. If you stop the crosses coming in, then you're not going to concede those goals. And I felt we were just too slow in tracking back and stopping the crosses. Watch the goals back. Watch the goal back. Watch the goal back that was disallowed for VAR. It's exactly the same. And there's so many balls getting crossed in, and we're not stopping the crosses getting put in. There's not enough pressure on people, and that for me is the problem. But watch that goal back yesterday, and then the one that was disallowed with VAR, and you'll see what I mean. Clark at fault for the goal. I would say yes. You're not going to get any arguments from me. I think we have the edge to stay up because of the January window, says Steve. Shelby's a good footballer, but he's a bit slow for the Premier League. Not his fault, really. Mark, he might be a decent player, ball player, but he's, I've heard it from Rafa Benitez when he was at the club, and he's clearly not a good influence in the dressing room. Disruptive, maybe, is the best way to describe it. Disruptive in the dressing room. And that is the problem. I think that is the problem. If you had to take Sam Allardyce, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, or Harry Redknapp, who would you choose? Harry Redknapp?
I don't know. I'd probably be inclined to say Sam Allardyce,
Would you? Well, in this position, I just couldn't. It would really stick in my throat after the fact that he took that money and bought a place in Spain and called it Casa St James's, and then he went to the Mackhams and he was rubbing it in with faces. I couldn't.
I don't like him at all, and I
couldn't have him at the club.
Yeah.
I couldn't have him at the club. I'd rather have Harry with his window half wound down, doing press conferences from the car park, than have him. I really couldn't have him. And Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, nah, not in a million years. It's the last Man United associated player that I wanted the club for a while anyway. Do you think NUFC should have a fan zone now, again, with ex-legends? Paul, it's an idea. Yeah, certainly something that Newcastle legends will be putting to the club at some point. Let them get their feet under the table, let them get a manager, and let them stay up, is what I would say to anybody trying to get anybody like lined up for the club. Tom says, any chance of getting Les Ferdinand on one day? Yeah, mate, I mean, it's a possibility. These people are very busy. And trying to get ex-players is difficult. But I will be making a concerted effort for Christmas, because as you know, I do like to have a bit of time off over Christmas, like everybody else. And I've got a little treat lined up for people over the Christmas period. So I'm not saying any more. Les possibly could be part of that. I'll leave that with you. Alan says, the new owners were totally taken by surprise. Correct. How quickly the takeover happened. So I hope the fans will chill out about how quickly decisions are made. Wise words. Steve, get Ben Jacobs and Simon Jordan on. It'll be packed. Oh, God. I heard rumours of a new stadium. Is it true, says Stephen Maddox? Not in my opinion, no. Certainly not in the short term. I think we'll be safe, but it's going to have to be a good January, says Ryan. We could be knackered without Super Wilson. You're right. Barry says, I'd drive to Liverpool to pick Rafa up. I don't even have a car. The guy is class. He'd be amazing given the opportunity and backing. Rafa for Man U, says Jeff. Any tickets there for Gavin Peacock? Yes, newcastlelegends.com. Click shop and you can buy them on there. Alan says, it's going to be a major problem getting rid of some of these players like Joe Linton, Murphy, Hendricks on long-term contracts and on big wages. I wouldn't get rid of Murphy. Certainly get rid of Joe Linton and Hendricks, but it will be hard to get rid of these people, won't it?
Yeah, well, I think we're just going to have to probably cut our losses and let them go for virtually nothing, which I wouldn't mind, because as long as they're off the wage bill and out of the squad, then I think that's a good thing. Hendrick, I definitely want to let go. Murphy, no, I'd be willing to give him a couple of seasons because I still think he's got a chance at Newcastle. And Joe Linton, I really do think he'll stay at the club. I honestly do.
Mm-hmm. Daniel's saying, is there any news on Fonseca? Why is no one excited? He's a cracking coach, never had money and always done well with money. He could be the next Pep. He could be. Sometimes the managers who come with the least expectation are the ones who you get the most from. I mean, I made this point earlier in the week. Kevin Keegan was playing golf in Marbella for 7 years after he'd retired from playing at Newcastle. Never had a managerial job. Came in and look what happened there. So sometimes it's the ones that you don't know about as well. Bielsa. Pretty unknown to the UK unless you watched, European football, and you didn't really know who Bielsa was. Arsene Wenger, when he came to Arsenal, I remember the Arsenal fans going up in arms about him coming, but look what he did over 20 years. Alex Ferguson came to Man United when Man United were at the rock bottom, and look what he did at Manchester United. He came from Aberdeen, I think it was. So, these managers who come in, you've got to get the right one. Fonseca could be the right choice. It could be the right fit. Going to be interesting. Steve versus Simon boxing match. It's not for me, that. I quite like Simon. I got on all right with him when I met him the other day. Can you get the Gallagher pigeon and Money Mike Ashley on Steve? I hope that pigeon's gone. We must find out whether that pigeon's gone. That's got to be this week's job. Anyone who's in the Gallagher, let us know. Photographic evidence. Has the pigeon gone? Mark says, KK played golf for 7 years. Are you saying we should get Tiger Woods? You should tweet that. It could be on Tweet of the Week. Steve says, need a centre-back, centre midfield and a backup goal scorer for Wilson, at least what I said earlier. I wouldn't be surprised if we spent a good few quid, especially if we're in the bottom 3. I don't think we'll be in the bottom 3 come January. There's another bold prediction. I think we'll just be above it. We'll see on Saturday. Paul, if that is that about the event? The event's on Friday. We'll probably have... Oh, about the pigeon. Cheers, Paul. We'll have to farm Joe Linton out on loan to the likes of Tranmere until his contract's up. No one will pay for him. I think so. I think you're right. I'd love to have Bielsa as manager for a time. We wouldn't have an issue with fitness with him in charge. No, he definitely likes to keep people fit. The pigeon, Paul, yes, got you. Graham Coleman says, Arsenal were the best passing team under Wenger at one time. And he was mentioned this week. Speaking of Andy Kerr, who was working with him this week, and Andy's... works for Behind, of course, and he's a native of these parts. But Andy rang us this week and said he'd been working with Wenger, and Wenger would not say no to the job if it was offered. I don't think that was the impression he got. So that will be interesting. Watch this space, and you heard it here first. If Wenger comes, remember to hit the likes. Thank you, John from QTech, and remember to bid on the T-shirt. Follow me on Twitter at Steve Wraith on Twitter, and you can bid for the Food Bank T-shirt. We will announce the winner later in the week. And don't forget, subscribe to the channel as well. Holly, as always, an absolute pleasure to spend Sunday night with you, and look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.
You too. Richie for captain.
Whee!